Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Art After Hours. I'm Shauna Robeson with Creating Space Coastal, and in this video, we are going to continue the embossing and texture journey with some more dry embossing techniques, and that includes creating this fun little pop-up card. So I'm going to show you how to create this and also how to do the little decorations. So there's a lot of fun little techniques. So if you're interested in finding out how, stay tuned. Let's get started. So welcome everybody to Healing Art Happy Hour. And this is, we have one more week. Yes, we have one more week. So this is the third week of embossing and other texture that you can add to your projects. And this is going to be a dry embossing. And we're going to talk more about scoring and cutting and also some punches. So that's our focus for tonight. So a little bit of everything, and I want to start with just some basic tools that many people already have. So I'm going to show you like kind of the old school way to do it with the minimal supplies, and then we'll get to some easier shortcuts. And then next week we're going to get to the super uber fun shortcuts of die cutting and embossing folders. But so what I wanted to start with is this is, and I'm just going to show you a bunch of different techniques, and then I'm going to show you how to do that special pop-up card. I'm going to show you how to do the folds of that and some fun decoration. I'm going to use some of these techniques as we decorate it. And, but I'm going to start with just some basic stuff. So this is a hardwood stamp. And if you have stamps and you like stamping, having a wood grain is a great option to have because you can use it in so many ways. This could be a fence, this could be a table, this could be a dresser, chest of drawers, it could be a picnic table, this could be the end of a table. So there's a lot of ways that you can use this grain. But what I really wanted to show you is that if you have something that you want to add texture to, like this could be a wall panel, right? Paneling. So what I thought would be fun to do is just add some debossing. So I'm going to basically go into the paper and create texture. Now, you probably won't be able to see it very well on camera, but if you were to be able to touch it in person, you would feel it and you'd be able to see it live. But basically what I can do is, this is just a mouse pad that I have here. I'm using a ruler and a bone folder. Now I like the bone folders when I'm doing straight lines, especially if I don't have a guide, because this is kind of shaped just for doing lines. So I'm going to use my bone folder, but you could also use a ball stylus tool as well, if that's what you have. All right, so I'm just going to go to where those shadow areas, that implies that there's a break in the planks of wood. And then I'm just going to run my bone folder along that line, and it's going to press down and create a deboss in that area. And so then it's going to feel either like wall paneling, or it'll look more three-dimensional like wood planks. Could be wood flooring, could be a fence, whatever it is that you want to use it for. It's a very versatile stamp. And if you don't have the one with the planks, because there are a lot of different wood stamps out there, maybe you have one that is solid wood, you could always draw in some lines and then do this and then give it more dimensions. So you can, I don't know if you'll be able to see in the back of that. See how you can see the embossing that's popping up? So that's just the back of the deboss. And when I feel this, I can feel it go in those little areas, and it just makes it a little bit more, realistic, and gives it a little dimension. Now you can't do embossing because if I turn it over, of course, I can't see the pattern at all. But I could even do that with papers, like if you have a patterned paper. Now, in this case, I would use the ball stylus because these aren't straight lines. I'm not going to use the ruler, but I could go in and just create a deboss along the edges of these two tones just to create a little dimension in the paper. So you can kind of see how it's just creating some dimension that's following the pattern of that paper. And you can see the embossing on the back of that. So that's just another way. All you need for that, for this type of debossing is, of course, a mouse pad and a tool. And you could even use a knitting needle or something else that you have in your stash. Now, another way that you can use this is with vellum. Now, the cool thing about vellum is that when you emboss or deboss or mess with it in any way, if I just run my fingernail, it turns white when you mess with paper. So I can use a stencil, and I don't even need a light box for this because I can see through it. So I could use a stencil and create my own design on it. Let's see, I'm going to use these little grassy area. And for this, I'm going to use the ball stylus because it's a little bit better for this type when it's not a straight line. I mean, these are little straight lines, but this can fit in there a little bit better. And I think I'll use the smaller one because this is a small pattern. So I'm just finding the right sized ball because the balls are different sizes on the tips. So I'm finding a smaller one. And then I can just bring this in a little bit. I can just follow those patterns. And it's going to turn those areas, it's going to deboss it and turn those areas white. Now, in this case, you can decide whether you want to use the embossed side or the debossed side because both will be, it'll have both. Okay, so now I have these little grassy pattern. And let's say I want to make it a garden. I can just freehand a little flower I want. Or I can make different kinds of flowers or patterns. I mean, this is just really fun to play with. So you can make an entire garden. You can even say, I love you. So vellum's really fun to play with, as you can see. And like I said, you can either use the back, if you like the look of the embossed side, you can use that, or you can use the debossed side. For the garden, I like the embossed side, but for, of course, writing, you have to use the debossed unless you write it backwards because this will not read what you want. So just be aware of that. Now, we talked about last time using the light box, and you can certainly do that as well. Let's say on this little square, I want to just put these little, maybe some blocks on there. Just follow that shape. So you can use a stencil through a light box and get whatever pattern that you want. All right. Now, another old school way to do something is, oh, actually, before I show that, I did want to show you, and this is using a punch. So let me just show you. I know I talked about punches a little bit before, but I want to show you how to make a really cool 3D flower by using a punch and stylus and this mat. So these are punches and these are Stampin' Up! Punches. And the cool thing about this design is that they lock in and store fairly flat compared to some other punches. You can see some of them can be really large. So they're fairly low profile, and that's nice, but they're still bulkier than a die cut or just having the die cut machine. So, you know, punches are getting less and less popular as they get more and more dies. But the nice thing about them is you can just grab them and go, and you don't have to have a big machine or anything like that. So I'm just going to, I opened it up, I unlocked it, so it opens it up so I can punch. And it basically just has a blade there that's going to cut out the shape. And I'm going to look at the bottom to see where it's cutting. So I use the least amount of paper, because if I go in here, I'm just cutting a hole in the middle. So I go right to the edge of the paper and then I pop it. And then I'm going to do the same with, maybe I'll use this color. And again, this one's the same way. It just unlocks, opens, and then I can go in and I made that embossing there. So I'm going to just go past that right above the edge and pop. Okay. So I have these cute little flower patterns, but they're just flat paper. And what I can do with my embossing tool, and I use the ball stylus for this as well, is I can add dimension. First of all, I can kind of press in the middle, and then I can press on those leaves. I'm just rotating, and that's pushing the paper in and curling it. So I'm getting a curling effect. And now I have this really cool three-dimensional flower. And that looks a lot more, you know, like a real flower. And then I can do the same with this one. Curl it. So you don't have to buy those silk flowers. You can actually make your own flowers. Now you can even distress these by spritzing them with water and crunching up. You can crunch it all up in your hand after you wet it with water and make them more distressed, so they look more and more like a silk flower. So now I have these two little stacking flowers, and I could put a little brad in the middle, or I could just glue them on and put a little pearl or one of those dimensional accents in the middle. And now I have a really cool little, let's see, I'm going to show you the side, little three-dimensional flower. So very easy way to take your, you know, your basic die cuts or punches or whatever they are, or even if you buy flowers that are already cut, you can make dimension. Another thing that's fun to do that with is something that you know is supposed to be round, an element that's round. Maybe it's a vase, maybe it's a balloon. You can just kind of push it in the middle. And you're basically debossing this side, but you're pushing it out on the other side. So it gets a curve to it. And then on the other side, I could go in and press the little valve and make that flip up. So now the balloon is rounded. I really wish that it would show up better and quit readjusting my white balance. So you get this dimensional shape that's now curved, and then you can just put some dimensional foam tape underneath to support the middle of that. And then this little part sticks up. So you can just create some fun dimension by using just a ball stylus right on a mouse pad, or you can use foam, craft foam, anything that's got some give to it underneath your project. All right. I did want to show you, since I talked about stamps, I mean, not stamps, but punches. I just want to show you a couple fun punches. So this one, I'll be using a little bit of this, but you'll find punches that are an entire set that go together. You could punch several different colors of paper and then use one color for this part, one color for that part, mix them all up and build, basically you build up a stamp. And here's one, this was an L stamp. And I don't even know if any of these are available still, but I just want you to be aware that there are these types of things out there. And whatever that you get, this is supposed to be an L, but as you can see, I use it for everything but an owl. These are all things that I've made with the owl stamp and put them together as cards. So here's a couple bats, some different bats that I did. Those are pretty much the same there. So you can think outside the box. These bunny ears are actually this flower. I just cut this little part here. So if you have some stamps in your collection, just think, you can think outside the box a little bit and use them for different things. Just think about what the shapes are. This shape, if you take those away, are bunny ears, right? The wings of this bat is actually from a round punch, and I just used other round punches to cut out little arcs in it. So you can really build from there if you want. And remember that applique, the liquid applique that I use that on the bunny tail to get that 3-dimension. So another way to use that. Okay. So I showed you the owl, and then this was another one I just wanted to show you. This is actually a bird punch, but I turned it into, instead of a bird, it's a mustache and eyebrows. So think outside the stamp. I mean, I keep calling it a stamp. Think outside the punch. This is a wing. These are wings, and those are the bird bodies from the stamp. So you can have a lot of fun with whatever punches you have. You don't have to always use them for exactly what they are. Like, for example, this could be a cloud, or this could also be ice cream and things like that. So you can have, you know, different things. They do also have punches that are just for borders. How this one works is you line up the paper along this, and you stamp it, and then you line up the pattern on the outside, and as long as it's lined up over here, it's going to be lined up on your project as well. And then you could just make it as long as you want. And then at the end, this strip comes off and you get this cool scalloped edge. So you'll see some that are like that as well. And another thing that's not a punch, but I thought would be good to show you, is this crimper. This is really cool for making corrugated cardboard look. So I'm just going to follow the arrows. I'm going to feed it in to where the arrows are, and then goes right in, and then it comes out the other side corrugated. So that's a shortcut. It's a little bit more dimensional than doing the score lines. So you get a little bit more dimension. They're a little bit bigger than when I just do the score lines. The score lines, you can see, are a lot smaller, and I'll be showing that in a little bit. But for example, for my little cupcake punch, this might be a little bit small. I don't know if I'll be able to feed it in there. I'm gonna try. I would probably just use my scoring thing, but I could just feed it in there, and then I get a little cupcake holder. Now, let's say you want to do some scoring and you want to do some cutting. And this is, I'm going to just show you, this is old school way to do it, but if this is all you have, this is the way you would do it. I'm showing you with the mouse pad and with a scoring tool how to make this pop-up card design base. Okay, so there are a gazillion templates out there for different designs. This could be a toolbox, this could be a chest of drawers, this could be, you know, a lot of different things. But in order to cut this, I'm going to show you, I'm going to try to show you, we'll see how this goes. Because I always do the shortcuts, but I wanted to show you in case you don't have any of those tools and you find this really cool pop-up card you want to do, and you can't do it because you don't happen to have all those fancy tools. So this is a template. You'll find a lot of them online. I did post the one for the stacking blocks on my website, so you guys can get that free in the free tools and resources. But this is, and I might post this one as well. So this is the template that's telling me where to cut things, where to score things, and so it gives me a guide. Now I'm starting with an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and I just cut it in half. So it's basically 5.5 along this edge and then 8.5 this way. So you can get 2 of these cards out of 1 sheet of paper. So this tip that I wrote down is to cut first and then score. Now that could be based on how I cut it before, but I'm gonna follow that anyway. So this is what I want to use. And part of this is I want you to see how much the shortcut helps you. Well, like I said, I haven't really, you know, done it this way in a long time. So this will be interesting. All right. So I have to kind of measure things, right? Because I got to know where to go. So this 3-inch, that's the score line. So I want to cut, right? So I want to go to, looks like this is a 5.5. Yeah, so up at 5.5 inches high, I want to cut down from that point all the way to 1.25 inches. So to do this old school, I'm going to use my handy dandy cutting board, or cutting mat, I should say. I have to be 2.5 inches in, according to this. So I just want to mark that. And the reason I'm showing you this is because it is futzy, and I want you to just see how easy it is to do the other way. You can decide. And also, like I said, if that's all you have, then you got to do what you got to do. Okay, so that's 2.5 in. All right, and then it's 5.5 up. So I'm going to use that guide and go to 5.5. And I'm going to hope I'm straight because I don't want to have to spend all this time measuring. So I'm kind of eyeballing how straight I am. I could mark the 2.5 down here too. That's probably what I should do. But I don't want to take too long for this. All right, so now I'm going to take my blade, my X-Acto blade, and I want to cut it down starting at 1.25. So this is 1 1/4. That's 1 1/4. So starting there. Just making sure 1 1/4. Okay. So I have my cut. And it's only one cut. So that's all I have to do for cutting. Thank goodness. Now I'm going to score at the midpoint. So this is 4 1/4 up. 4 1/4, which is the halfway point. And I'm using pencil because I can erase any of these marks that show up. So at 4 1/4 on my mat, I could use this grid to help me with. All right, so I want to that point. And it's going basically from the cut point all the way to the end of the card. Now, I didn't even put that soft pad underneath this. I just did it right on the cutting mat, and it's still giving me, it's still embossing it. So that could work. However, you're going to get a little bit better embossing on this. The only problem is I won't be able to see these lines. So I'm going to just try it on here so that I can use those lines to help me guide. Okay, so now I want to do this at 2.5, and it goes from the cut line all the way to the edge. So at 2.5. And if I put this ruler right on the lines on this, and I just move my card to line up with the edge, then I know I'm getting a straight line. The ruler straight and the paper straight, then you're good to go. I'm going to score, and I'm just going to do it a couple times since, like I said, I don't really have the soft padding. And then I'm going to do that again at the very bottom of the cut, all the way to the side of the paper. And there's just one at the top as well. You can see it's a little wutsy. All right, I think I've got all of my guideline, all of my things in there now. All right, so this is going to fold this way. This is going to fold down this way. So if I'm folding this, I'm kind of folding folding everything sort of at the same time. And I have my card. And now I can use a bone folder or something to really get my folds. All right, and now I have the card base. It just needs to be decorated. So if all you have is a cutting mat and a ruler and bone folder, you can still get your pop-up cards or weird, you know, whatever you want to make, boxes and all sorts of fun things. It's just a little fussier than using some other tools. Okay, I'm going to move this out of the way. Manual cutting for me, for my paste. And now let's look at some other fun tools that we have. The first thing I want to show you, we've talked about this too, is a paper trimmer. And the cool thing about this particular tool compared to some of the other paper trimmers, so there are the, you know, the guillotine versions, the ones with the rotary blades, but this one does something that's a little different that those ones don't do. These ones that have these little sliding blades. Now this is a blade and this is an embossing tool. And I'm going to actually start off with removing the embossing tool. But the cool thing about this is that you can start and stop a cut anywhere you want. And that's not possible with a guillotine or a rotary blade, because this one tells you exactly where you're starting your cut. So let's say, I don't know exactly, let's just say I want to make a window. I want to make a frame that is, we'll say 3/4 of an inch. So this has markings to 1 inch here. You can't see. So this is a 1 inch. So let's say we want to have a frame that is 3/4 of an inch all the way around. What I can do is I'm going to bring it up here because it starts at 1 here. Stand up for this. All right. You'll know what I'm doing here in a second. So I want to start my cutting at 3/4 of an inch here. So right there. Get this closer. So I have the markings right there, 3/4 of an inch there. And then I have this at 3/4 of an inch on this line here. So if I make sure that this blade is right at the 3/4, when I push this down, okay, now it's going to start my cut. If I'm using a rotary, I can't really stop and start on precision. And now I'm going to go all the way until I get to 3/4 from the edge. So 1, 2, 3/4. So let's say it's right here. Then I can rotate my card. This paper is not trimmed exactly right, so it's not perfect. But now I'm back at my 3/4 line here, and I'm going to go back to the 3/4 line here. And I'm going to set my blade down and trim until I get to 3/4 here. So let's say 1, 2, 3/4 right there. Lift and rotate. Now I'm going to go to 3/4 there, and I can see where the blade, where the line is cut already. So all I have to do is line it up there. Make sure it's on the 3/4 line. I line it up with my already cut line. So it's kind of like a matting tool. And then I can go down until I get to, let's see, have I cut that one? No, I haven't cut that one. 3/4 here. So 1, and then rotate again. Now you can get a die cut that's exactly this and saves a lot of time. But if you don't have it and you have this, there are ways that you can work around it. So you cut there and you go to the other cut, and then you now have your frame. So you can get precision cutting with this tool that you can't get when you are using a rotary trimmer or a guillotine trimmer. So that's one of the cool things about this tool. And we're going to use that for this project here as well. In fact, I think I'll do the whole thing on it. So this is the project that this is what I'm trying to make. It looks like stacking blocks, and there are score marks on each of these squares that are hard to see because my camera is whitewashing everything out. And it folds flat just like that to go inside your envelope, and then it'll pop up and stand like that. So it's very, very cute. And then you can decorate it with all sorts of fun things with little blocks and whatnot. And we'll be doing some of those too. And the template, like I said, is online, so you can get it there. And I have a visual template here. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut this to size. And I even marked on there, I think it was, oh, I guess it's on the template that I have online, but I didn't write it on here. But each of these score lines are at 1 1/4 inch. And you can make this any size as long as you have the score lines are even. This is just using an 8.5 by 11 paper, but if you use a 12 by 12, you can make it larger. I just wanted to show you because this is more common to find. And so what I want to do to start with is just cut my paper down, and it's basically 3 1 1/4 sections. So that's 3 3/4. All right, and now I'm going to just pop out this cutting tool that I have on here, and I'm going to put the scoring tool on. And there's a little section at the end of this particular one, and usually they have that where it's just where you load and unload the different blades. So I'm putting the scoring tool on. So this one just has a soft scoring piece of metal. I'm not going to cut it. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my marks. And I'm going to basically score this at intervals of 1 1/4 every this way and this way. So it's all, these are all scored into those squares. All right, and I do have the markings on this side to do 1 1/4. So I'm just gonna run that out, 1 1/4, and run my scoring tool. Boom. Now I can put this side at 1 1/4. And run my tool. Now I'm going to rotate it and again do 1 1/4 each side. And you can see if I tried to do this on that little mat, that would take me forever. So 1 1/4, and then I'm going to go 2 1/2. And I did mark all of those on the template, like at each interval. I marked them on this template, but you just basically move it 1 1/4 each time. So it does take a little bit of math. And then I don't know if I put those markings on the template that I have online actually. And then it's going to go 1 and then 1/4. Find it easier just to do that. Just move it 1 inch and then okay. So on the, if you're using the 12 by 12, you won't have this extra little tab at the end, but just remember which one is this short piece, because this is only 1 inch and these are 1 1/4. And this is going to be helpful because it's going to be, that's going to be a tab that you're going to use for gluing, but you need to know where that is on your project, because if you get it confused, it's going to, it'll kind of screw up the situation. Okay, so now I have all of those scored. Now I can do my cutting. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my score tool, bring my cutting tool back. Now you could go in with scissors and do this, but I like using the tool. All right, so what I'm going to do is basically these X's, these pieces are going, and I've marked a cut line. This whole line here is to cut. So all I'm going to do is follow those cut lines. And I can either start going this way or I can start going that way. But this is where it's very useful to have this tool, because I can decide, I can be very precise about where I'm starting and stopping my cut. So I'm going to go, I think I'm going to start with my cuts this way. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 in. So to the right of the third square is right here. So I'm just going to put the score line right on that, right on my cut line. So I can see when I look where it's going to cut, I can see that the score line's right there. So the score lines help me know where to cut. Now, I don't want to cut all the way down. I only want to cut down to 2 squares. So I'm going to stop right at the intersection of that third square. And this little marker right here tells me where the blade is cutting. And if I had enough lighting, I could actually see. It's like I have to turn the light down low so that the camera doesn't wash it out, but then I can't see. Okay, so I cut that line. Now I'm going to cut my second line, which is just 1 more square over. Back up to the top and down to that intersection again. All right, now those are the only cuts going this way. There's just those 2. So now I'm going to rotate my project. And you don't have to think about what's happening at this point. All you have to do is follow the template. And now I want to cut that from this line and over. So I'm going in from the end, and that's that short piece. I'm going from that in 1, 2, 3 squares. So 1, 2, 3 squares, and then I start at the intersection of that square. So I want to line up my little intersection where it's going to cut. And then I'm going to cut all the way down to before the last square. And I want to make sure that I'm lined up. I've got my groove in there. Okay. Intersection of that last square. Okay. Now I'm going to do this line. This line comes in 1 square from the previous one. First, I'm going to line up my score line with the cutting area. Then I'm going to get the blade where it needs to be. So this is where that one started, and this one's going to start 1 square later. Sometimes you could start more into the cut and then move up to the edge of the cut if that's a little bit easier. Okay, and I'm coming down and I'm leaving 2 squares at the bottom. So coming down to the intersection of the second square. Okay, seems complicated, but if you just follow the template, you can pretty much do any of the projects that you'll find online. I do want these ones with the X to be gone. So those are cut, so that's good. It's a good sign. And this one should come out too. Okay. So that's what it's supposed to be. Oh, I missed some cut lines. Oh, you know what? I didn't mark these cut lines. I better mark that. Like, why is that still there? I missed a couple. That's why I put those X's there, because I know that those are supposed to be gone. So all I have to do is go from to lining up my grooves. And I'm going to start. This time I'm going to start in the middle of where I'm cutting. And I'm going to go to the line. That way I have a little control. So you can do it that way too. Like if you want to just carefully kiss that line, you can start in the middle. Now this piece should, oh, just flew away. And I want to cut this one out as well. And in the middle. And that should pop away too. Okay, so now you're like, how does that turn into the stacking boxes? How does that turn into that? I'm going to show you. All right, so now this part right here is the top. And these fold down to make tabs that you can glue together. And these fold down to make tabs that you can glue together. And this is that extra tab. And this just acts as a way that you can glue it to the bottom. So it's part of the bottom. And in the template I have online, I show you where to fold it, I show you where to glue it, and I have all the instructions. So this is basically the front of the card because you have more, you can make it go the other way, but the problem with it going that way and how we cut it, you'd have to reverse the pattern basically. is that you want the fold to be on, you want these open ends to be on the back side. So since this one folds forward, it just is a cleaner edge. So you want all of the folds to show on the front, and then the back end is kind of, you'll see the kind of the glue pieces there. That makes sense. So the back side is where we want the glue. Now you can make a bigger size with the 8.5 by 11 by doing 2 halves and then kind of piecing them together. But I thought that was a little more complicated, so I just thought I'd show you a smaller version that works with 8.5 by 11. I think this is a fine size as well. All right, so that's the back. You can see how you can see the ends of where you glued. Now I could put more adhesive there to hold it down, but still it's the rough side. And then this is the folded forward side or folded back side. So it's a little bit more, you know, finished over there. Hi, just a little reminder to please click the like button or the subscribe button, comment if you find this content helpful. Let's get back to it. All right, so now I have my base and I can decorate it. So we're going to use some of the techniques to decorate these the parts that are going to go on there. And I'm going to show you some other tools for that. One tool, which I did talk about before, is this scoreboard. And this is nice because it's real portable, real easy to use. The tool sticks right there with it. So you have everything you need. The other thing that I did not show before, and this is the Martha Stewart mini scoreboard. They have a bigger one as well, and it's a little bit different style. But on the back of this one, and you'll find some other brands that have this, they actually have a guide for creating envelopes. So these are score lines to create envelopes, and I'll show you that in a little bit, but it'll tell you it can do these 4 different card sizes, and it tells you what size paper you need to create those cards. And then it also tells you where to score to create the cards. So that's helpful. And then it also has information about creating the envelopes there. So it's kind of a nice little tool. But what else it can do is it can create some fun decorations for our little stacking block. And one shortcut for this is the decoration blocks that we're going to cover this should be about 1 inch. So I want them to be about 1 inch, and they're going to have a little border around them. And a shortcut to creating those is a 1-inch punch. So instead of cutting strips of 1 inch, which I could also do, I can just punch out the 1 inch, and I know that I have it right. And sometimes the punches give a little nicer finish to them than cutting it with the blade. Sometimes it sort of presses the edge down a little bit, so it looks a little bit more finished. I'm just going to punch out a few of these. Now it does waste a little paper. I could look at the bottom like I did before and try to get it lined up right away. So on this project, I might just cut it with the cutter, but I like how it does a little bit of a finished edge because when it pushes down the blade, it almost does a little bit of some debossing on the edge. Now you can get a similar effect of that if you want on a project that you cut with the other blade, and I'll show you that. I should show you. Just using a ball stylus and your foam or whatever, you can kind of push down the edge. Just go along the edge, and you can kind of push it down and give it a little bit of a kind of a finished look that's a little bit more like a punch does, because when you do the punching, you're pushing down the paper, so it does create a little bit of a kind of a finer, you know, pressed edge. This edge is a little bit messy over there, but I think the bigger ball works better for this. But just, for example, if you cut something that was a punch and you had that nice punch edge, and then you had to trim that and you want to recreate it, you can do that by just going along the edge with your ball stylus, and it'll push down the edge a little bit to give you that effect. So a little aside. Okay. So back to this. So one of the fun things you can do with this is, again, set like kind of like the corrugated look. You can do that with this, with just, but a smaller version. So if you're trying to make corduroy or something like that, you know, like for a pattern for, you know, a project that you're doing, like you're trying to make clothing, or this is great also for doing on this little cupcake, except for this one. This one's kind of at an angle. Do it on this one. This one's a little more straight. See how this is kind of angled here? So I would probably want to do that on the free form and follow the angle of that to create those. But this one is fairly straight, so it's a little angled on the side, but I'm going to just follow. I'm going to start in the second one in and just go down straight. Now you can angle them. In fact, one of my tools has an angle on it. Now the other thing I could do is I could also go, I mean, you know, that's going to be a fun one. I could also, if I wanted to, make it a checker pattern. And this one I already cut it 1 inch, but so I'm just gonna basically just cutting 1 inch. So this one I can do this way. And then I can go across this way. And I can either go on the same side or I can go deboss on this side. So let's do, so one side will be emboss and one direction will be emboss. So let's see what that looks like. So you can play around with some fun patterns. A little tricky on this little tiny piece of paper. So that's an interesting, it almost has a like a quilted pattern look to it. And then the other side looks a little different. And that's how I made that waffle cone pattern. I just did it a little bigger. So let me show you that. And that's how I did this one too, except for I just used a white ink. And I did two, one size and then one bigger. So I made kind of like a, more like a plaid. So there's a lot of fun patterns you can do. I think I used a fine liner. I just used a fine liner to draw in the way that the waffle cone folded, but this, actually let me use this. Because this waffle cone's gonna come down, a little uneven, usually, and then one side kind of comes down and folds over the other one. So you can just draw that in. So you can play around with coloring your cone. With either ink with your stamping inks, or you can use the. And one thing I did with this one, and then I could color the ice cream. Okay, so that's going to be a little fun project. I probably won't get to tonight, but you can see how you can make some cool things. And I showed you this before too, like with that cupcake, you can also make a little insulator for a coffee cup. You can even print off a coffee cup online, like a coloring, using the coloring pages or something, and then just add a little bit of your own design by just putting that little insulator there. Let's get back to decorating this guy. But I haven't showed. I did show last time, but I'm going to show it to you again. So this is a bigger scoreboard. And the cool thing about this one is it has diagonal. So I could try to make diagonals on the other scoreboard just by rotating the paper, but trying to line it up and get a good diagonal is really tricky. So this one's a little bit easier because it is designed to make a diagonal. And this is actually where this tool came from. It has a little spot. Let's back a little bit. A little spot on this. It's really big. I'm going to rotate this. Because this can handle a 12 by 12 paper, so it's really large, and it has this tool that goes right there, and it has these little tabs that you could mark your projects if you want. It has more of these to just, you know, tell you where you're going if you're making a project. But all I want to do is create some diagonals with this. And so I put this diagonal plate so it has the regular score lines, and then it has this diagonal plate. So that one is really good when you're doing bigger projects, because I can't really do a very big project on my little mini. this little present on there, but I'm going to create a little line right for the top of the box. I'm just going to hand deboss that just to give it a little bit of some shape. And then this little bow on top of it. See that little bow on top? I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to push in on that bow just to make it a little more dimensional. It's going to stick up on that side. So I created a deboss below the top of it. This camera, why does it always want to wash everything out? I wonder if it's on the, that would help. So it's, can you see it's got the little deboss there and then the bow pops out. So I think that's a really cute element. And then I created, using this stencil and the vellum, I created a little bee to make it kind of look like a block. And you can see you can pick any theme and just really, you could have fun with this design because there's so many little embellishments and, you know, fun ways to add to it. And things you can do with, if you, with these punches, if you punch a bunch of different colors, you can kind of combine parts of it. So if I wanted to have a yellow hat, but I wanted to have the red palm on it, what I could do is I could cut off one of the palms. Let's see. We could do it a couple different ways. Let's see, I'm going to make it a yellow hat with a red palm. So I'm going to just cut off the yellow palm and then I'm going to glue the yellow onto the red. So this palm will be behind it. So it'll look like it's all one piece. So you can see how fun that is. And it just folds over flat. You can even decorate the bottom pieces. And then this area, you can put another panel that you just write your little note on it. Oh, and I missed this one here, but I want to go ahead and move on to showing you a few more things. Now, I was talking about how the scoreboard, hold on, I gotta find it in my pile. You know, when I watch other videos of people, they lose their stuff too. It's like, it's right, everything's right there within your arm's reach. You know it is because you didn't get up, but it still somehow disappears. Okay. So these instructions on the back are to help you create these 3 envelopes and these card sizes. So I have ink on my fingers. So this is an A7, which is a 5 by 7. Now, the one thing that, you know, you can do fancy card sizes, but I don't like to waste paper. So one problem I have is that you have to use an entire 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in order to cut down one cardstock. Now I always keep the trimmings so I can reuse them, but that's the reason that I like the A2, I think it is, because the A2 basically uses up a whole sheet. But I do like the look of some other, some other shapes, and depending on the project you're making, you might want it bigger. So this is the A7, which is a 5 by 7, and this guide helps you create this envelope. Now, I have not glued these together because I wanted to show you what it looks like. Basically, it tells you right on here what size the original envelope needs to be. So for example, this is the A7. So it tells you, you need to start with 10 by 10 paper. Let me zoom in so you can see that. It says 10 by 10 paper. And then you have this 10 by 10 paper and you line it up. It's basically kind of like a diamond. You line it up with the A7, these little lines here. If you get this, I want you to understand, because it can be a little bit confusing at first. So there are these little dots and you line your paper up with these dots, and then it'll tell you, okay, here's the score line for the A7 card, and you run the score line and then you follow along with where all the scores are. And there's a marker on each corner. There's a little arrow that points where the score line is. In fact, I think it went this way. There's a little, yeah, went this way. There's a little, let me get it back lined up. There's a little arrow showing you which one to use, and you just follow it all the way around and it'll score. You just score it right on the back. It has these score lines. And then you can use a little scissor to cut out these little notches, and it even tells you on here, it'll say, where's the little, there's a little scissor somewhere. Oh yeah, right here. It has a little diagram of a scissor, and you just cut out these little notches, and the score lines will actually help you, guide you. Cut out these little notches, and then it just folds right up into your card, and then you can glue it together. Now you can use a corner trim to change the shape of that if you don't like that, or you can cut it straight across, whatever you want to do. And then there you have your envelope that goes with your card. So it's kind of nice, right, to be able to make some different sizes, and it has one for each. This is a great way to use up your patterned paper that you maybe don't care for. This is kind of a blue speckle. Maybe I don't really think I'll use that, but I can make it inside my card, or maybe I find something that's coordinated with my project and I could put it inside, and it just gives it a little bit more interest as they open it. I don't like to put too much pattern on the outside just because I don't want to interfere with mailing, but this pattern's pretty, it's pretty light. You can still see everything, so I don't think that this would interfere too much. But if it was too crazy of a pattern like this, I probably wouldn't want on the outside, but that's really fun for the inside of the card. And then maybe I'd use a piece of this paper in the project of the card that I made. That would be fun. And so this one goes with, well, so this is the, let's see, this is the 4-bar. I think that's the smallest one. I don't think that's, this is the, it's called 4-bar, and this is the size, and you can actually get 2 cards out of an 8.5 by 11. So it's almost like a little thank you card size. So if you don't want to fuss with that, you can actually get this, and there's probably various options out there. They do make a punch/scoring board for envelopes, and it has all of these card sizes and all of these envelope sizes that go with them. So, and it has instructions step by step right here. You just line it up to whatever the line is. This actually punches a little notch. It punches this notch out of these little corners, and then you score it along this line. And it even has its own little scoring tool. And it comes with, I think this is the reverse punch. That's for, I think that might just be, oh, I think this might be for like just around the edges to just make a nice smooth corner on that side. So it even has little instructions that come with it, and I just glued them on the bottom of it. And since we're at 9 o'clock, I'm not going to go through and demonstrate that, but it's just a shortcut for creating an envelope. And they have shortcuts for creating other things too, like this one is for creating a gift bag. And so this is the layout of it. So this would be the template. And this is an example. There's different sizes it can make it longer. But you know, you can make it a little purse, and then you could put, it's great for putting cards in if you want to give cards for a gift. You can, the only thing is it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit smaller for the size of my cards, but I like it's good for like little thank you cards. Maybe the 4-bar cards would have been in there. For me, I'd like it a little bit wider so it would fit my cards, but I don't think this makes them that large. But I also use that design for my deck of cards that I made. So I didn't make it fancy. I just used it to hold my cards. So it's handy, but I mean, you can also, if you have an electric die cutting machine, those will cut out all of these templates too. They just don't do any scoring typically. So just to be aware that there are these little double duty mechanisms out there that can help you figure out, you know, how to quickly, these shortcuts out there to make these different things. Now, if you want to make gift bags or boxes or anything, maybe you got a really fun gift box with something that you got for your birthday and you want to make it, you want to use that same design, you can make it yourself just by dismantling whatever it is, and you can make your own template. So this was just a packaging, it's not anything exciting, but if I take it all apart, I can find out, you know, what size this is. I can actually create a template that fits the paper that I have. I mean, I'd have to shrink it down to 12 by 12. It's not necessarily easy, but if you have a smaller one that's like a gift box, you could do that. And all of these are just basically like a template. You just would measure, see where you're supposed to score it, and then you could recreate any kind of gift bag or something like that if you wanted to. If you wanted to go there, you could. The other thing that the scoreboard can do that's kind of fun, and this is the last thing I wanted to really show you, is it can create these little rosettes. So, and I didn't put enough glue in there, but basically this is just scored at every 1/2 inch, and then it's 2 sides. So let me just show you it really quick, because if I use this scoreboard, it's very good. I won't put it all together, but I think it's kind of a cute design. So I think it's about 1.5 inches, I want to say. We'll go with that. And you want 2 strips of whatever it is, and it can be with 8.5 by 11, or it could be, this is 12. So it's 11 or 12 inches. It doesn't really matter too much. You just want 2 strips of it. And this is where this larger one comes in handy, because I can handle this 12-inch paper, whereas I can't with the other one. So I'm going to score it at every 1/2 inch. And that's much easier than having to stop, turn it around, try to get the page. If I was trying to use the mini, I just would not be able to do this very easily. It's just so much easier. And then I'm going to do the same here. And this is where, if you had a bunch of these, you could mark every 1/2 inch. I mean, that's a little overkill, but you know, if there were like, if you were doing several of the same project and you just wanted to know exactly where you're supposed to mark to score it, you could put those at those intervals and you wouldn't have to, do any math or think about it, you can just go, okay, I'm just following these tabs for one project. It's pretty easy. All right, so that's pretty fast, pretty easy. And then you just create an accordion. I'm just gonna connect these two sides. Like that. And then you want to have a nice, good, real strong glue. Like, if you have a big piece of really sticky glue, you can put it there, or you can use a hot glue gun or something, but you want it to dry really fast. And I just used some really tacky, double-sided glue, and I put it on both sides. And then I glued on the little circle and just put that on both sides so that it would hold it together. It's because it's going to pop open if I let it go. But isn't that fun? So you can make a little blue ribbon or whatever you want. Okay. I was going to show you this when I was demonstrating the crimper. But I also just want to show you this with the ball tool as well. So I'm just going to show you this because I think it's really cool too. So if you want to make corrugated metal, this is actually that metal tape. It's for duct work. It's not duct tape like you normally see. It's actually metallic. It's an aluminum, but it's got a sticky. There's actually a paper covering the adhesive. So you just peel that up. It's peel and stick. So it works great for lots of different projects. So I just stuck it on a piece of a cereal box. That's what that is. And then I'm going to feed a little bit into my little machine here. And you get some corrugated metal. Isn't that cool? Now I could even do that with just the tape by itself. This just gives it a little bit of body. So if I'm gluing it onto something, it's gonna hold the shape a little bit better by having that cardboard underneath. The other thing you can do with this, and this can be freestyle, or you can use your score sheets or whatever. It doesn't really work with score sheets because this is too thick, but you could do it with just the tape. But you can, if you want, you can score it. You don't even need the cushion underneath because this acts as the cushion underneath. So you can do straight lines if you want. You can change up the size of the tool. You can just press the tool in, bring this closer. Let's say you want to make it look like it's like rivets. You can just push down into the metal. And of course, now we know we can use the alcohol inks to color it. So you can have a lot of fun with your stylus on top of this. So I could make a bookmark and do all sorts of fun designs and I mean, you just really, there's endless opportunities to doodle. So this would be a great combination with Zentangle, Jen. I do want to show you one last thing that's going to be a preview for next week, because we're going to be playing now with the even shorter shortcut, and that is using the die and emboss machine. And this is a manual one, but I'm going to show you, among other things, how to take something out of your recycling or bin or trash can. This is actually styrofoam cup. That was a styrofoam cup. This was a protein drink container. Those little pouchy type containers that anything liquid in your refrigerator is made from those. And this is a Coke can. So you can upcycle or recycle even things that aren't necessarily recyclable by using them with dyes and making some really cool patterns. So I'm going to talk about how to do that next time. So I just want to give you a little bit of a teaser. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Healing Art After Hours. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, or anything else if you find my content helpful. Thank you so much. And as always, happy creating. Bye.